All right, welcome everyone. Item 3 is the open forum. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board? Kim? Turn your microphone on there. Yeah. Push that button and then, yeah, just want to make sure the camera.
Oh, let's not do that. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm actually here representing the girls' soccer booster club. With me, I have Amy Reynolds and Lisa Schultz. They're both part of the booster club. We're here to thank you, actually, specifically the school board, Superintendent Funk, Activities Director Afton Wackles, Athletic Trainer Lynn Rothmeyer, and other school staff for their continued support of our program. We would also like to thank the coaching staff from this past year, Coach Barnhill, Coach Hansen, Coach Dahl, and volunteer Coach Schultz. This year came with many barriers, and the coaching staff and players were able to persevere throughout the season, and at the end of the year, on a positive note, making it to the section semifinals and getting great local media attention. This allowed the players to be part of an elite group of girls soccer players that have made it to the section semifinals or finals 10 out of the past 12 years. When I was on the school board, this sometimes was dreaded, this open forum time, and sometimes because it was consumed with negativity. It was important for us that you, the school board, hear positive things happening. This booster club values the positive working relationships we have with the district and the coaching staff. Thank you for all you do and the work you do.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. Appreciate that. Anyone else like to address the board? Anybody else? All right, we'll move on. Item 4, approval of today's agenda. I would need a second. Second. Julie, any discussion about today's agenda or requests for changes? If not, need a motion to approve? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign? Motion carries. Consent items, item number 5. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed. Is there a second? Second by Jill. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? If not, all in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6, superintendent report. Mike.
Not a lot for you tonight. As you're aware of the shootings that have occurred in San Bernardino, I lose count, Oregon, Colorado, school shootings, public shootings are becoming much more prominent in our society. I just want to inform the board that, again, some of you may recall this, about a year and a half ago, we had representatives from the Minnesota School Safety Center meet with directors and principals in the district to talk about crisis planning. There's a state law right now that says 4 times a year districts have to go into a lockdown type situation. And, lockdowns, as what we are finding out, are not necessarily the best approach to shooting situations. So I've asked building administrators to, take a look at their plans again, and I'm also encouraging them to run them at odd times of the day. So if you hear kids coming home saying suddenly we went into a lockdown in our lunch period today, okay, well, there's a reason for that, because if something bad happens, we don't know when it will happen. And so I just wanted to let the board know that we are trying to be as proactive as we can to keep our students and our staff safe in this crazy world that we live in. Also had an opportunity to run into the sheriff just publicly a couple weeks ago and offered him the services of our district buildings in the summer if they wanted to come in and do some training. And I think that would be a good thing as well. Brenda Casillas will be visiting Sibley Elementary sometime in the next few months. She's on a state tour recognizing multiple year recipients of reward schools. So Sibley has, I think, been named 4 out of the 5 years that the award has been out. They've received it, so she'll be down here, and I'll be sure to let board members know when that occurs. As you're aware, this will be the second year we're providing the ACT test for juniors in April. We are now going to be, Kathy will be here probably at the February board meeting or February workshop to share with you information about this ACT prep class. It's a video series we're offering to students before school. Well, actually, we're going to be offering a login and password. They can do it anytime if they want, but we'll have a teacher available in the morning that they can take the ACT or the prep course before the ACT in April. And so they can take the course, or if they have band or choir in the morning, they still have access to the videos to watch. So this will be, I think, a positive for our kids. And then the other thing for the board's awareness is sometime early second semester, parents in the community will be able to go online and they should be able to see the entire curriculum within a course that their son or daughter is taking at Elberly High School. And this helps us as a district to ensure that we're teaching the standards to the same fidelity regardless of the teacher. Questions on that slide?
Is the ACT prep free for all students?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you.
The tech department is installing a wireless upgrade at Elberly High School. Actually, I think they started today. And again, this is the wireless upgrade is through the federal E-rate funding program. We've ordered new iPads. Our current iPads are 4 years old, and this is part of the plan that you were briefed last spring by Kenneth. And we now we'll be transitioning to new ones between December and January here. And we're getting a lot of requests from elementary teachers for more Chromebooks. They have them in different pilots, depending on what building it's in. And they say we can really use these a lot with the new math and elementary curriculum, or reading curriculum within the elementary. So we're taking a look at, do we take curricular dollars to do that, or what? Because right now they're not scheduled to receive the carts, I think, until 2017, according to the plan we're on. So we're going to see what we can do there. So stay tuned on that one. And then finally, and this is small here, can you blow that up, Ashley? I don't know if you can or not. There we go. Okay, so scroll up a little bit. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to, because tonight we're going to ask you to approve the levy here in a little bit. And I'd like the board to focus on the column changes in taxes 2013 to 2016. And in government, we often hear quite a bit about taxes going up, taxes going up, taxes going up, regardless of what government entity it is. And as you can see here, if you were in the Albert Lee area school system, if you had a $100,000 home in 2013 to 2016, your taxes have gone down $98 on a $100,000 home for the Albert Lee school system's taxes payable. And it's going down $8 this year. So when the board has a charge to the administration and to the community that we're going to try to use our dollars in the most effective and efficient manner possible, there's an example in print for you of what our administration is doing to keep our costs down for our taxpayers. And that's all I have, subject to your questions.
Other questions for Mike? It's excellent. We appreciate the hard work you and Lori put in on that, so thank you, as I'm sure the taxpayers do. All right, Student School Board, Justine. Use Linda's mic there.
Break coming up, and once we get back, we have finals. As far as I know, everything's going well. Nothing really specific that I have on hand, but nothing bad.
Good, that's good. All right, other board members, Linda? Bill?
Linda and I and Mike went to the MREA, what do you call it? Annual conference. And it was a two-day conference. It was interesting. It was a little bit different than Schools for Equity and Education. Kind of the same bent with regards to a lobbying effort for outstate school districts. I think it's going to be something that we definitely want to look at as far as a membership moving forward. They provided a lot of good information. There were some good breakout sessions. If you wanted to know something about early brain development, that was the place to go. So,
And that's Minnesota
Rural Education Association. Yeah,
okay.
thank you. And one of the other things was the ACT prep class. Is that the John Baylor prep that we looked at?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then we got to look at that a little bit more, and it looked like a very good program, so. And then the other thing, we had an insurance board trust meeting. Nothing as far as for Albert Lee, but we're looking at possibly doing some major changes there, so we'll be busy probably with an endorsed candidate. So that's it.
Joe? Julie? For the meeting, the second meeting in January, I think I mentioned last time, I want to work on our goals and our board self-evaluation. So, but I also want to get public input towards the goals. So I'm going to do that in two ways. One is we're going to post on the website a place that people can write in suggested goals so that we have that information when we have our meeting. And then I think the first 10 or 15 minutes of that night we'll have as a public forum so that people that can want to come and talk to us about the goals, so we can get the goals that way. And I just want to be careful that, you know, the comments and the people that show up, that they're about the goals. That's what the meeting's about. It's not about anything else. It's about what can the district work on, as we talked about last time, over the next year or two. So, and we'll get more of that in print so you see that, but that's the idea. And that's the second meeting in January, which again is a Tuesday night because of Martin Luther King. So, any questions about that? Good. If not, we'll move on to item 9, effective and efficient operations. And so we have the presentation tonight of our 2014-2015 audit. And I think Greg's going to go over that. Greg Larson, welcome.
I got to spend some time with the Finance Committee and spend a little more time than we get to do tonight. I get to go through it fairly quickly tonight. If you have questions, let me know. We're going to go through something called the executive summary. And one of the problems I have, I need to take my glasses off to read my book. I need to put them on to read the overhead, so I'll probably put them on. The overhead will show some of the differences of what your general fund unassigned fund balance has done over the last 5 years, and you can see on this chart that has not changed very much. That's the goal of your district, is to have a stable unassigned general fund balance. So in 2011 you had $5,922,000. At the end of 2015, $5,880,000. And so your district goals is to be at 14% for unassigned general fund balance, 14% of your operating expenditures. This year, your unassigned general fund balance is 14% of your operating expenditures, so pretty much right on goal. Don't always get to see this, where your unassigned general fund balance stays that stable. Operating capital fund balances, you've spent down some of that on the bottom half of that screen. There you can see that there was some spend down. And I think we just, that's what it was, a planned thing, but that you are using your operating capital funds there. I don't know if we can go on to the next screen. This is showing the food service fund balances, and you can see that one has gone up and down. You had a fairly healthy food service fund balance, and the state has a certain target they want you to be at within so many months of your operating expenditures, and you're within that guideline now. You had a nice increase in the fund balance this year. I did mention with the finance committee that your Lori Volz, during the year, right towards the end of the year, she had a question from the people that you work with on your food service management had sent some information, and Lori Volz, there's an operating guarantee for revenues, and she didn't quite agree with their computation, so she did some computations, and they said, I guess I agree with Lori Volz's computation. I think it was about $30,000 higher than what they had originally proposed. So your fund balance is $30,000 higher because of a question Lori Volz had to those people. So she does watch out for the district. The next one, we show the community service fund balance, and you can see that one has gotten a little bit stronger as far as the fund balance. A few years back, we had most people in education would call it a penalty for having too big a fund balance. They've removed that, but again, it has not gone up by big bounds. You just have a nice fund balance there. We can go on to the next one. Debt service fund balance. So you can see that that's a little bit down from what you had been. That the state of Minnesota, when you levy for bonds, usually at the beginning you have an extra cushion to help you build up some reserve in case there's some delinquent property taxes, and so at some point they do reduce your levy some, and I think that's what you're seeing here with your fund balance dropping a little bit in debt service fund. And that's a plus for your taxpayers. You're having a little bit less levy. The ADMs, the average daily membership numbers, and this was a positive this past year too. It's only 70-some students, but that's a big number for your district. You can see it 3,176. And so it's been pretty much a steady thing. 2013 and 14 were pretty flat there, but in this 2015 school year, you did increase by some students. So that's a very nice plus for your funding there. This graph shows you where you're getting your revenues from, and it's hard to see this, especially for somebody like me that's a little bit colorblind, but the local property taxes is a smaller percentage. There you can see most of your money is coming from state sources. The 83% would be the state sources. The federal sources, I believe, is one of the smaller pieces there, the 2.83, I believe, and then the others would be the 3.51. I believe the local taxes, again, I'm having trouble with that color there, but. And then the last one, district and school. I guess we have some more, just showing some of your expenses shown by ADMs here, and reviewed this one with the finance committee and Lori, and she said there were some changes in some of the ways that things are categorized now, as far as things showing up in this category that weren't in the past, as far as some of the E-rate type things where you spend some of that money. UFAR codes, okay. So you can see there was an increase here. One other district we do this with, they showed the same kind of increase this past year. Regular instruction, and these costs are up some this year per student. We have vocational instruction that stayed pretty flat over the period of time. Special education funding, this is a big piece for your district. Is a big piece for a lot of districts, but when I reviewed this with Lori Volz prior to the finance committee, and your costs per ADM are higher than other districts of your size and other districts in the state of Minnesota. So I think Lori's just going to take a look at this piece. Instructional support piece, again, the state very stable the last few years. Site buildings, equipment, and other. And so you can see that has gone up. Pupil support services was up some this past year. And then transportation cost was up just a little bit from the year before. And then the food service program, you can see that has been pretty stable in the last 3 years here. And then the debt service fund, costs are up just a little bit. I think you had an extra bond probably with all the HVAC programs you've been doing in your district, so that was up just a little bit per student also. So those are the different pieces showing how the district's done the last 5 years in those different categories. One of the things that shows up early on this report is that you did have a clean audit opinion. The findings really don't take too long to find or explain because there really wasn't any findings. We had a couple of small things on the student activity counts, but really the district is doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's a couple of student activity counts with no activity, and the district is monitoring those. I think Lori mentioned at least one of those will be shut down, and I'm not sure about the second one. You'll be watching that one this year. And then the district just updated its accounting for student activity fundraisers and made it a cleaner thing. So I know that's been updated, the policy, and a nice worksheet for some of those people. When you're student activity advisor, you have a nice worksheet you should be doing anytime you do a fundraiser. It just creates more accountability anytime you do a fundraiser. And as an auditor, it's nice that you're auditing. The student activity advisor is basically auditing their own program, and then that's turned in. We have a piece of paper we can review at the end of the year. Basically, you can see that the district has done well. It's holding its own. Small increase in the student numbers, which is a nice thing. I don't know how this year is coming, if it's holding its own.
I just reviewed the fall enrollment for this year and did a year-end trend, and we are up a little bit.
Okay,
Again, that's good
good.
news.
That's good. So I don't know if there's any questions. The Finance Committee got to spend a little more time with it. I think I stayed within my guidelines for tonight. But overall, the district did have a good year, and it's nice to hear the positive comments. As a former school board member, it is good. And this is another positive for the district. Your finances, I think, are very solid. So I do thank you. And I think the staff of the district are very nice to work with. So thank you, Lori.
Excellent. Any other questions for Greg? Thank you, Greg. And then item 9.2 is approval of the district audit. And so I need a motion to approve that audit. Is there a second? Second, Dave. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 9.3, review of policy 714, the fund balance. Lori.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Funk, each year especially, I look at this and bring it to the board right after the audit report, just to take a look at our current fund balance. We're supposed to review it, fund balance policy. We're supposed to review it annually, and as Greg touched on the graphs, our audited balance for the unassigned general fund is right at 14%. Our board policy currently states 14%, so we're in alignment with that right now. And of course, we will, as we update the budget, I'll be bringing that amended current year budget, 15-16, to you probably in the February board meeting. And so it is, my goal is to continue to keep that fund balance right at that 14% for the unassigned general fund, and so we can review that again if need be when I bring that amended budget back. But for now, we're in a good spot.
Good questions? I have a question. It's education for me, and because we went over this 2 years ago. Remind me again why it's it's 14, but what's it matter if it's 12 or 15? Why is it 14?
14% is a level that's healthy. Now, right now, we are not having to borrow. The cash flow has improved because the state is no longer implementing that tax shift. You may recall that. We had to borrow $6 million just because the state was holding back paying us on time. So that was their way of balancing their books. But now that we have an improved cash flow because they're paying us more timely, 14% is an adequate level to have as a target, rather than higher than that. We had been higher. Off the top of my head, it was something like 16% in prior years.
Thanks. Other comments?
The present climate and the climate that we look like we're coming into with regards to the fiscal nature or state of the state of Minnesota, does that warrant us to look at increasing this?
At this time, it looks like the budget surplus, the state's looking at maybe focused on early childhood. I guess we'll wait and see what the legislature does. But at least the fact that they have a very positive situation with the state budget and the state financial forecast, at least that tells us that, you know, our 14% fund balance goal is still, should be adequate, because they won't be looking at tax shifts. If anything, they'll be looking at hopefully giving us some additional funding, at least for certain programs.
So we need a motion to approve the fund balances just read by Lori. Is there a second? Any other discussion? My other discussion is that we've just, before we move away from finances, we've just had multiple reports of excellent finances in an environment where it's easy to not have excellent finances. So again, I just want to say publicly that I appreciate the hard work, especially that Lori does. These numbers aren't an accident. They're hard work by a lot of people in the district, so thank you. So all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, 9.4, approval of the Austin Albert Lee Special Ed Co-op Joint Powers Agreement. Sarah?
Good evening again. Oh, thank you. All right, so I'm here to talk about the cooperative again, and we'll be asking for approval tonight to move forward with that. So just a few notes before we move forward is, why do we need a cooperative? And I know we've talked about this several times, but really it's for the students whose needs are being met at a minimal level right now. We are seeing an increased amount of students with unique needs that need those special services. An increase in significant behavior supports and programming that we need outside of our Setting 3 programs. It's very difficult to serve many of our students right now in our current programming, and we've talked about that a little bit. And also it would lead to some guaranteed educational programming for our students that we don't currently have because many districts can say no. 2 weeks ago, some of you started asking about the governance of the cooperative. So the cooperative board would be made of one school board member from each district, a superintendent, the superintendents, and each district would have one vote. The board would meet monthly, and then the cooperative operating director of special services would also serve as a non-voting member. That school board would have legal authority, just as the school board does, to adopt policies, bylaws, and procedures, develop any budgets, and make any decisions that is necessary to run that cooperative. There would also be an advisory council that would be made up basically of two people, both directors, one from each of the districts. The administration for that program would also be contracted through Austin. So any administrative oversight in that particular building. The cooperative, just like any other district, would access state special education funding to offset those costs. That would include administration, instruction, related services, and support staff. Right now, the current plan would be to contract those services from Austin. And the cooperative would also have access to third-party billing, and that's similar to what we do also. So we are able to bill for particular students that are eligible for speech language, occupational therapy, PT, some behavioral supports, which we call CTSS, nursing, personal care.
How much did we receive from MA, third-party billing this year or the year prior? Ballpark. Lori?
It is a large sum that's increased substantially over the last 3 years. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's above and more than 300,000.
Yeah, I think last year we were at around 450,000. Any questions on that piece?
A question about the board. It sounds like it's a school board,
Yes.
and I know the state law requires 6 members, and how does this not have to have 6 members?
You know, that's a question I'll have to talk to Kevin about. It's a cooperative board, so I think it may fall under a different set of rules than a traditional school board, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I know Austin approved the cooperative agreement, which our attorneys have reviewed last week, and I don't think a flag was, but I'll double check on that.
And when will the meetings for that start?
We would have to, I would imagine sometime probably this spring.
Spring, okay.
Yep.
Again, we have the building purchase and renovation, which we discussed 2 weeks ago. Did anyone have questions about that?
And once again, the tax impact is 2.2%. I think you just are approving a decrease of, I think, 2.3% tonight. So it's an $8 increase on a $100,000 home for the life of the bond.
So we wanted to talk a little bit, I know I was addressed and asked how much per child it would cost. So in some estimated projections, the cost per student would be, with including staffing, about $19,000 a student. And those are projections based off of current student count.
And when she says 19,000 per student, that includes all operational costs of the building. It includes operational costs of the staff. That's what the tuition per se per student would entail.
And then just a review of other options. So sometimes when we're sending students out for a level 4 setting, our educational costs are ranging from $44,000, sometimes up to $75,000. And I put a specific example up there, similar to 2 weeks ago, where we had a student placed for 5.5 days, and it was $1,218, which would have equated to about $38,000 for the entire year, this current year. We're still running into the situation where many districts are declining to take our students because we're actually actively seeking those placements out right now. Are there any further questions?
Just, you'd mentioned the 19,000. That is not including the transportation cost.
The 19,000 is net of state aid, operating costs. Transportation would be a cost of the resident district to transport the students there. So that is a separate piece, but it also has separate funding. For students that have a special route for special needs, a disability, that has a particular separate formula that is part of the special ed aid formula.
There, I think it is now. Have we heard back from Father, I can't remember his name, at this point yet on the offer that was made?
There we go. Father Steffes, yes. We just received word last week that it's a yes. So we are proceeding with drawing up the legalities, the legal papers. Actually, I'm going to meet with a local attorney tomorrow morning to start the process of getting all our data together for the next step of that purchase process, which would still, of course, take a board approval.
And I can't remember if we talked about this, but how many hours of instruction would each student receive per week?
We haven't talked about the school day, but we're trying to have it similar to their peers in a general ed building. That's always what you try to do. On homebound right now, most of our students are getting 5 hours a week. So our students with the cooperative would be getting at least 6 hours a day. Mhm.
Other questions or comments? I've received some comments and questions about, this seems like a lot of money per student, but my response has been that in a public school, we have a moral and legal obligation to provide these services, and so we're trying to do what's best for these children in the most efficient way that we can. And I think that this meets those requirements. We don't have a choice if we're going to do it or not. It's just how are we going to do it, but we think it's in their best interest.
Correct. If you remember when we were talking about the 5-district cooperative, I did have some federal guidelines on that PowerPoint. And we really are legally obligated to provide the best education. And we do feel at this time that minimal service that they're getting is not ideal.
Other questions or comments? Jill?
Question, not necessarily about this, but just kind of what the auditor was just saying about the special ed spending that we have being higher than other districts and the state. When can we expect some information? How long will that take to find out more about that?
Well, we will be continuing to analyze that. There's a variety of things that we would look at. We'd have to take a deeper look at the number of programs that we're offering. The staffing cost ratio per student is one way we'd look at that. And then also a big factor would be the number of students that have been identified for services. So maybe I'll have Sarah talk to that piece.
Right now, we do have a lot of open enrolled students. We also have students that come to our district because the smaller districts are not able to support their needs. So we do have higher needs students when you think of surrounding districts. We also do our hire on the qualification, and so I'm working with the evaluation teams and really looking at, are we qualifying students appropriately and dismissing them when we should be?
Did the auditor say it was based on the ADM, just on the entire student base, or was it based on our special ed students?
That data was looking at the total cost of special ed per the regular ADM population. So what that is telling you that we have higher than the average special ed population that we're serving.
Sure.
There we go. I'm sure this is probably already part of the thought and planning going into the legal documents, but what would happen with both Albert Lee and Austin paying for the facility together if one of the parties wanted to end that cooperative? What would happen to the building?
The joint powers agreement addresses this piece, is that, as you can understand, we would be bonding for this debt. And so the districts that are in place when we make that decision to proceed with the bonding step, that they would be responsible for the term of that debt. So both districts realize that they will have that commitment for the building for that 15 years.
Other questions besides the name? Seems a little backwards to me. But,
Dr. Funk mentioned that also.
Just the other thing is, and I asked Sarah this question a couple of weeks ago, identification of special needs students. And Jill couple thoughts on your question and where we're at. I think one of the things that Sarah has taken a look at since she's gotten here is the evaluation process and the identification of special needs students, and I think she's on that. And I think we do have a considerably higher number of special needs students than other districts our size in the state. And so I think she's got a good handle on the way ahead there. But the interesting thing with that is, I think we are identifying, or maybe they've been identified, but we're under-classifying some of the needs of our students in this district because we have no place to send them. And so if we have kids who are severe at the high school, I think it's just human nature that, okay, if we really have nowhere else to put them, then I guess maybe they are considered a level 3 kid. But if we had a real level 4 setting, we could maybe use that. And the reason I bring this up is this. Austin, who's got maybe 1,000 more students than we do, they have, I think, 35 students in their level 4 EBD program in Austin, and we have none. I mean, we have some who we try to get help for in other districts, but we have just a handful of students. So I think on that end, I think that they've been doing some potentially over-identification of some special needs students. So that's on the EBD side of it. I also think if you were to ask me what's our most significant increase in an area of special education, within special education overall, it's your autistic kids, your students with unique needs. We are seeing just an explosion in that, and it's a program such as this that can really help meet the needs of those students, staff working together with those students, and it'll provide us the best opportunity to meet those kids' needs. So my thoughts on that.
Okay, good discussion. So we need a motion to approve the joint powers agreement. So moved. Is there a second? Second. Any final comments or questions? All in favor, aye? Aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. 9.5, the final reading of policy 203.2, which is the orders of meetings of the school board, which we've gone over twice now. No changes last time. No changes for this reading. So I need a motion to approve that policy. So moved. Is there a second? Second. Other discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. 9.6, policies for annual review. Jim.
Good afternoon. We have two policies for review. Policy 505, which is up there, the guidelines for distribution of materials. There's both of these, there's only two changes, and that's because we changed the title of the individual that's responsible for them. So instead of the Director of Teaching and Learning, it is now the Director of Secondary Programs. Since they're just a review, they only need to be read once and a vote taken. The second one is this one, 603, curriculum development. Again, just the title change.
Questions about those? Any questions about those changes? If not, we'll take a motion to approve. Oh, I'm sorry, Jill?
So the one about the materials, it was just changed to the Director of Secondary Programs, but the other was both secondary and elementary. Does the materials one not need to be in the elementary or with the secondary?
The distribution of materials, I usually send one person. I want one person looking at that, so it's not multiple, so they know this is the person to go to for the materials piece. The other one is, they both have responsible for different curriculum, so that's why they're both on there.
So no matter what school it is, they would go to the secondary
Yep.
programs director?
Yep.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, so do we have a motion to approve those policies? Okay, is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 10, closed session pursuant to Minnesota statute, section 13D.03 for the purpose of labor negotiations. I need a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.